Dapper Don Podcast. Dapper Don Podcast. This is your boy Dapper Don Dez.
Don Podcast. It's your boy Dapper Don Dez. And today we're going to break down, as we always do, Southern hip-hop and all of its moving parts. We're going to talk today on the prison system and the certain ways inmates move within the prison system. We're also going to talk in homie homage about Raheem the Dream. You got to really get up on it. He was an 80s rapper, an Atlanta 80s rapper who really put a lot of groundwork down for the Atlanta music scene. So we got to give him some props today on homie homage. And for sure, we're going to talk about Pictures Worth 1,000 Words. We're going to go through some album covers that I noticed young ladies tend to turn to. Main one being a young artist from Mobile, Alabama named Flo Milli. She has a real simple flow, but she's a real brass, it's some hot girl music. It may not be that for you if you really into that lyrical, miracle, spiritual, but I want to break down the album cover, as simple as it is, why we start to see. I'm going to get into it. You just stick around, man. But before we do all of that, I want to get into it I want you to make sure that you like. If you like something, hit that like button. Share with your friends on social media if you feel like you know somebody else who's a Southern hip-hop enthusiast who feels as if, they can get some value out of this show. They can get some value out of my opinions, my point of view. I'd definitely like for you to share it and leave a comment on who you think I should talk about next as far as homie homage. What artist you think goes unseen? Maybe 8-Ball MJG, maybe Jay Prince. It could be anybody. It could be a producer, Beats by the Pound from No Limit. Man, we can do anything in homie homage. We just want to talk about the artists who have paved the way. So first and foremost, I wanted to talk on today in Dapper Don world. I wanted to discuss how inmates are moving in prisons. See, because I, as many, have been through the court system, and jail it's different in every other place, right? No one place is the same, but it all has so much commonality. And I wanted to really do a solid deep dive, man. I really wanted to give you an informative look. I want to give you a formal look on this episode of Lingo, Lyrics, and Legacy, where we break down the lingo that makes the lyrics that builds the legacies. I wanted to discuss the song that sparked this whole, I guess you could say, thought that was like the launching pad for this was Boosie's Like a Man lyrics. So in the lyrics, he says, went to the pen and stood on my own too. Fat mouth and slanging ish, fist fighting, be whatever you want to do. B being for, B word. The reason why, the part where he says slanging ish, right? The thing that's interesting is because when he first got out, he talked about, when he was beefing with other inmates, like they would fill up the cups with urine or they would throw it at each other. Like how monkeys throw stuff. That's how they would kind of do it when they was on death row, because they wouldn't have contact. It's 23-1. You get 1 hour out. And I guess they want to spend that hour, talking to their family. I'm sure they not bringing up what they've been doing with their time as far as throwing urine on people. I'm sure that doesn't come up in the phone call conversation, but that's a part of prison, man. And I thought that I was like, that is gross. That's definitely out of the million reasons why not to go, that's up there in the top 10. But the thing that make that so much more interesting is we just thought, okay, that's a weird thing. This isn't something that everybody does. But he ended up later now, 5, 6 years later since he's been out. Boosie described how prison was for him, the DJ Vlad. Him and Vlad was talking about NBA Youngboy and how NBA Youngboy was getting into all kind of trouble in jail and all kind of drama. And was it NBA or maybe Kodak? But either way, one of those hot boys, they was getting into it with each other, and that's how he ended up getting into a story about how he used to open, I guess, a food tray where you open a food tray, he'll pee on the hallways. But another thing he did, now talked about this with YNW Melly, he talked about flooding the bathrooms. Not the bathroom, the cell block. All right. So he would clog up the toilets with a towel and keep flushing and flushing and flushing the toilets till the whole cell block is flooded. Now, there's different ways to do this, and I'm going to go through a few of them with you. But I don't never remember this happening when I was in the county jail, because in the jail I was in, the bunks was in the beds, and then the toilets was outside of the cells. Like in Duval County, you could do that because the toilets is in the cell. But the one I was at, the one I was at when I was out of town, the toilets was up against the wall, and they had no door. There was no privacy. If you had to take a dump, you did it in front of everybody. You took a shower, you did it in front of everybody. Zero privacy. But I guess we see why now. I definitely guess we see why. And I remember, sitting there and thinking, man, how degrading this is. You sitting on the toilet, you watching people walk by, you thinking, bro, mind your business. Get out of here. Nobody's actually looking at you, but you feel like people are looking at you. And that's just kind of like an unwritten rule. You're not supposed to like look at anybody doing anything too long. But anyhow, that wasn't the setup for, I guess, where he was at. They had, some of them are in lockdown, but toilets is a common thing. Every place has to have toilets, and I'm going to get into why that is. And as much as this may sound like something funny, there's a dark, sinister plot to it, and I'm going to uncover it in this episode of Lingo Lyrics and Legacy. All right, so he talked about that. But that brought me to, well, I didn't explain what he said to you, did it? He talked about when he was in there, when he was in there with Vlad, Vlad, when he was talking to Vlad, when he was in there, he said, man, I used to throw stuff at the toilets, I throw stuff at the guards, like if him and the guards was having trouble and he was getting into it with the guards, like how I told you, Kodak said he got into it with the correction officer and it almost punctured his appendix. I don't know how you puncture someone's appendix by grabbing their testicles, but they say this is what Kodak Black did to a correctional officer. And he was telling them, like, if you and the correctional officer going at it, you have to report them. You report them to, I guess, their superior, and their superior eventually move you from, or move them if you and this correctional officer is getting into it. So there is at least that. There at least is a protocol where it's just not a free-for-all in most places. But like I'm going to tell you about this prison in Mississippi, you're going to definitely see what I mean when I say it's not like that everywhere. It's not such a liberal system. But there was also, not only did Boosie get into it by flooding cell blocks, but there was also Y&W Melly didn't talk about it. He was reprimanded in court for this. And he actually pled guilty. Look, here's how I'm going to run it to you. Deliberately overflowing toilets, threatening a guard, and fighting an inmate, and making three-way calls were among rules jail staffers said he broke. So this is Y&W Melly. So he was threatening guards, fighting inmates, and making three-way calls. I mean, he called somebody and they put somebody else on the phone. All right, well, so this was before they gave us an update top of the year about his case and him having all of this. It says jail staffer said Demons, which is Y&W Melly's real name is Jamal Demons, if you can believe that. His real name is Demons. I mean, his stage name is more polite than his real name. Said Demons, placed his towel inside the toilet and continuously flushing his toilet into the top tier and bottom tier of the units. I guess the unit 2 was flooded. So I guess the 2-floor tiers was flooded. The deputies reported the incident and said Demon admitted to deliberately flooding the toilet cell and threatened him. Yeah, I flooded it. Now go get your sergeant. I beat all y'all. And I had real lawyers to get me out of it. Demon was quoted as he saying in the disciplinary report. Demon was handcuffed and the deputies called for backup and shut down the unit housing Demon cell. So the whole unit was shut down. The housing unit was shut down. According to the report, Demons admitted to flooding the toilets but not threatening the deputy. He was ordered to spend 20 days in solitary confinement and lost privileges and got 10 days of probation. What is probation in prison? Is you on cell arrest? What is probation in prison? It's crazy how you can be, and this is a crime, by the way. This ain't just like an in-jail crime, like, whatever, I'm already locked up, it can't get no worse. That goes on your record. So it's a real crime. You can be fined for it. You can be held with no bond. Then they're having arraignment for your bond for that case. So you can bond out on that case, and you're still gonna be locked up with no bond. Or I think that's crazy. That's just the craziest thing ever. But they will set you a bond for a crime if it has a bondable offense, even if you're already in there for a crime you can't bond out on. But according to the report, demons admit to flooding. Yeah. So that made me think about it, because they also talked about finding, and this isn't just these two rappers, because you know YNW Melly ain't screwed on tight, and Boosie a little crazy himself as well. But it made me stop and think. There has to be other examples of people who are also going through this exact same thing. It's got to be. There's no way it's just one. It ain't just be one. So I was reading up, and I seen something out in Oklahoma. So look, this county inmate now faces charges of injury to a public building after 2 or more convicted felonies. That's the name of the crime, at least if you're in Oklahoma. According to on-demand court records, William Walls faced charges of injury to public building after 2 or more convictions. The charges were added to his record March 28th, but it happened in February, though. Reports obtained by the courthouse indicated on February 13th, a deputy was given 2 jail incidents report and the remnants of the fire suppression system sprinkler unit used in the jail. So basically, that was the evidence. He used, I'm not going to spoil it too much for you, so let me keep reading. Affidavit show around February 11th, inmate Walls was placed on lockdown for his behavior over the course of the weekend. The weekend was wilding. He was wilding. He was turning up all weekend. He was tearing stuff up. I remember when I was in the county, a dude banged another dude head on the little bunk beds. When I tell you, his stuff was split open. Jeez, oh my God, I was playing spades. I folded my hand and went in the cell. I'm like, it's hot out here, boy. They is wilding. When they tell you misbehaving, that could be anything. It could be anything. You gotta be careful around them. They gotta put you on lockdown. You was a wild boy. You was a wild boy, man. It could be something as simple as you was doing pull-ups on the stairs. They don't want you doing pull-ups on the stairs either. Okay, so affidavit showed around February 11th. Inmate was placed on lockdown on the weekend, over the weekend, wilding on the wild Saturday night, huh? Reports allege Walls threatened an act of violence against a detention officer and showed the inmate manipulating his cell door by jamming the lock so the door would not be locked. He got a Saturday night. He got places to go and people to see. He got to have that door open. You know, it's Saturday night. He got to be able to mingle. He got to go out, late night, sneak out, whatever. We all did it. We all did it, right? Not in the jail. So the door was not locked, but will register as locked on the control boards. The inmate asked the jail administrator to remove him from lockdown, which was not granted. Now, come on, y'all fellas, boys will be boys, crazy weekend, you know how it goes. Nah, buddy, they not letting you go. This upset inmate, rightfully so, alleged along with personal issues, this upset inmate, along with personal issues, other stuff going on, nobody else put the tissue by the lock in the door and, it was snuck out. He was just out there by himself. Nobody wants to be at the party by themselves. So at some point around 6:25, 7:18 p.m., that's usually about the time you come up with your best ideas, Walls flooded his cells, resulting in the detention officer turning off the water supply to the cell. Walls, according to the report, responded by then breaking the sprinkler head, resulting into another flooded cell. Bond for this charge is set at $25,000. Now, to me, I think that's interesting. I didn't even think about them having sprinklers. I don't remember ever being in a jail cell. I haven't been in many. Before you get to asking, well, how many have you been in? I haven't been in many. I don't remember sprinkler heads there. They don't care about us? Why don't they got sprinkler heads? I guess I don't walk in there looking for sprinkler heads neither, though. But I guess that's the most sanitary way of doing it. There was some more reports of them having raw sewage flood the cell block. I wasn't even gonna do you like that. I didn't want to read it. I ain't want you to hear it. You gotta know when you're going too far, man. So here go another one. Here's another example. According to the court documents, so not only this is separate from this was Walls. The Walls, this was different than Walls. Walls just flooded the sprinkler system. They locked him down. His lady wasn't answering the phone. He sprinkled the cell block. We've been there, right? We've all done that before. But let me bring you to this one. According to court documents, CNET filed the following charges against 26-year-old David Wayne Brandon and 22-year-old Robert Wicks. Anyway, here's what the charges was. Institutional vandalism, education facility, misdemeanor, 2 counts. Disorderly conduct, hazardous physical offense, misdemeanor, 3 counts. Criminal mischief, tampering with property. So according to the complainant, the flooding was created when each of the inmates, and this is like a brisk, of course this came from like a 3-4 page article. I wasn't going to go through all of that with you. I read it, but I just took out the part that I thought was most important. So that's why it just seems like it's bits and pieces of it. I just want you to get to the point of the flooding the toilets and to show you how inmates are using ways to rebel. And some of them, like I said, are as silly as the last guy who just was doing something to be doing nothing. This one was a little bit more closer to what I actually want to get to the actual point of, but I still just want to show you the different levels of why and how they think like this as inmates. So according to the complainant, the flooding was created when each of the inmates in question blocked the gap underneath their cell doors with a towel, overflowing until it caused water to back up in the cell. Then remove the towel, allowing the water to escape the cell in a rapid fashion in an obvious intentional act. The correctional officer in the video was filling in for another officer who took the day off. Began her shift at 6 p.m. and the act occurred around 6:30. According to the complaint, Wicks made a comment to the correctional officer that it wasn't her night to work and stated that he known she was there, he wouldn't have done it. That was the point that really made me not only to read you the charges, the institutional vandalism and education of institutional vandalism, education facilities, and disorderly conduct, hazardous physical offenses, and criminal mischief, tampering with property. Because I was like, well, what would the charges be? How could? Because you have to, I guess, what is the DA's burden of proof? Every DA has a burden of proof that you intentionally did it, because a toilet could just flood, and you're going to see here in a minute what kind of conditions people are living in and why you will see people rebel. You do get where it's mutual, right? This was also the same thing with kind of like, Wyatt Melly was just being a spoiled brat. These other guys was just this other guy was just doing it because he was being disciplined. But these guys were talking about doing it because they were targeting a certain correctional officer. And Boosie talks about that. When you feel bullied by another officer and you feel like you don't have a way to actually push back, you will find strange ways. Like you've never wanted revenge that didn't really solve the problem. It just made the other person feel as low as you did. That's kind of where that mindset is at, where you feel belittled, so you want to belittle that other person. I don't know what really happened with David Wayne Brandon here and his friend, but 26 and 22, you're old enough to know better, but you're still young enough not to care. And that just brings you into the psyche of how prison affects the mind of people and how it's a personal thing, because they said this wasn't her night to work. This was supposed to be for another guard. That's why they waited to 6 p.m. to do it. But I don't know if you're not on lockdown at 6 p.m. So they would have had to intentionally close the door, put the towel down, and just had the water run all over the place. So the other CEO would have to clean it up. And that's the whole, that's it. That's the whole bit. That's the whole bit. Because if you attack the CEO, now you in even more trouble now. So I guess this was their nonviolent protest, I suppose. Some see Murder, who was locked up, he went on a hunger strike. So sometimes people just, they go as far as they gotta go with this kind of stuff, bro. They'll stop eating if they feel like they're really being abused and they're being mistreated. They'll hunger strike, a sit-in, riots, whatever. They say the riot is the language of the unheard. But this next example I'm finna tell you about is the darkest and most disgusting thing ever. Not disgusting like raw sewage disgusting like morally disgusting. And I want you to listen to it close. There's a lot of information, but just stick with me. It's super important that we understand where this mentality against the police come from. Inmates at a Mississippi penitentiary in Parchment says chronic staff shortage and rampant violence has led prisoners to insert their own, order and treat their own stab wounds and suffer through seizures without medication. And in many incidents, there's only one guard for every 160 inmates, according to the lawsuit filed Wednesday in the U.S. District Court in Greensville, Mississippi. The suit is the second filed in as many months with the help of rapper Jay-Z, real name Sean Carter, and Yo Gotti, real name Mario Mims. So Jay-Z, as you know, billionaire, owns a stream company, married to Beyonce, is an avid philanthropist. And his team is always doing these social things. And Yo Gotti, a rapper from Memphis, but talked about how Mississippi State Penitentiary is somewhere where I guess a lot of his friends find themselves, although he's from Memphis. Like I said, he's still relatively close to him in a relative sense. And he was speaking about how these inmates, these aren't like hardened criminals. These guys could be there for drug offenses. They could be there for anything. Mind you, Jay-Z and Yo Gotti have a history of drug dealing. So I think this is really where it hits home. Like they're looking at these conditions like, man, one step too slow, and I could have been in there. This could be me living in these conditions, you know? But Yo Gotti, real name Mario Mims, who has been protesting the inhumane and dangerous conditions of the confinement in prison. The pair on Thursday also released an open letter to Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves, calling him to shut down the facility, which they wrote has become a shameful symbol of society's moral decay. Read that one again. They say it has become a shameful symbol of society's moral decay. The complaints was filed on behalf of 152 inmates who say that they are under constant peril at Parchment and that the environment is so barbaric and devastation of health and mental health care is so extreme and the defect in security so severe that the people confined at Parchment live in a miserable, helpless existence, confronted daily by risk of substantial harm in violation of their rights under the U.S. Constitution. Thurgood Marshall dad said the U.S. Constitution isn't how things is, but how things ought to be. That's what Thurgood Marshall dad told him. But Parchment, the only maximum security prison for men in the state, has more than 3,500 inmate beds and has grappled with a history of inmate abuse, corruption, and racial segregation. They had a picture in the article of an inoperable toilet inside a cell at Parchment. An inoperable toilet inside a cell at Mississippi State Penitentiary at Parchment. It was, when you see it, it was like wrapped up in plastic. And it's like, so what are these people supposed to use if they're in their cell at night? They can't open the door. Where do you use the bathroom at? You know, this shit, and mind you, it's a maximum security prison. So when they say they're a defect in security, that is a huge problem. That's not just kind of a problem. That is a huge problem, especially when we start thinking about if you're in there for drug use and you got this guy who's a rapist, murderer next in your cell, and there's only one security to 160 people in a 3,500 people prison. That, I don't know if you know how many 3,500 really is and how big of a facility you would have to house 3,500 inmates, man. But inmate named Thomas Lee, 49, was in so need of mental health care that before he took his own life in January, his last words were reported to have been, "I'm tired of this ish. They don't care about me or my food. I'm about to kill myself." Listen to this part. Inmates also describe rat feces, cockroaches, bird droppings contaminating their meals, as well as toilets and showers in a perpetual state of systematic failure. They let the smart inmate write that one. They let the smart inmate, the one always reading books, hey man, write this down. Write this down in the way you would want it to be said. The toilets are always broke. Oh, perpetual state of systematic failure. Ooh, they killed that. They did that one. They convinced me with that one. I'm like, it's a perpetual state of systematic failure. I mean, it's perpetual. No, it's a perpetual system of failure with the system. All right, the guards that made allege have played an active role in the deteriorating conditions, failed to act out of fear for their own safety, to look the other way amid violence, meaning, what better you than me, right? And mind you, not all of these people there for violent offenses. So you're putting everyday normal people who might have found themselves in a certain weird situation and now they're here. The meal, I don't even want to get too much into what they're saying they find in the food. But yeah, so they're talking about plaintiffs have resorted to tying their cell block closed at night to prevent guards from allowing other inmates to enter and assault them. That's how you got to protect yourself. Your toilet don't work. You got to tie it shut so they don't let other little crazy nutcases in here on you. It's so much. And since December 29th, at least 18 people have died in the Mississippi State Prison. Some as a result of gang-related riots and suicides, officials say. Mississippi has one of the highest incarceration rates in the United States. Across the state prison system, the string of violent deaths and lockdowns and protests outside the Mississippi Capitol to shut it down have caught the attention of U.S. Justice Department, which announced this month that it will review conditions at the Mississippi State Penitentiary as well as South Mississippi Correctional Institution and Central Mississippi Correctional Facilities and Wilkinson County Correctional Facilities. So this made me ask myself, I know it's called state penitentiary, so I assume the state owns it, right? This is a state-owned thing. But I asked, what is this a private prison? But I still had to ask if this was a private prison. And this is the answer I found out. Following a sprint of violence resulting in the deaths of at least 5 state inmates since the new year began, the correctional department began transferring inmates from Mississippi State Penitentiary at Parchman, where I just told you at. They transferred it to Tallahatchie. I'm probably ruining it, but let's just go with Tallahatchie Correctional Facility, a private prison. So the people over this private prison, because that's the state-funded prison. I mean, your state taxes is paying for that. The people over this private prison is a company called Core Civic, and you probably asking who is that and, what do they have to say. So here's a gist or brief rundown over the people who are over these private prisons, who's over these, not the ones I just read you about, but over another group of prisons. But just peep the mindset of what's going on down there in Mississippi, man. And this is how, and when I tell you where they're based out of, where they're based out of, that may explain the ties with Yo Gotti being from Tennessee. But let's read it and connect the dots ourselves. As of 2016, the company is the second largest private correctional. This is Core Civic. As of 2016, the company is the second largest private correctional company in the United States. Core Civic managed more than 65,000 state and federal correctional and detention facilities with the capacity of more than 90,000 beds in 19 states and the District of Columbia. The company revenue in 2012 exceeded $1.7 billion. By 2015, its contracts with federal corrections and detention authorities generated up to 51% of its revenue. It operated 22 federal prisons with the capacity with 25,000. By 2016, by 2016, they were running more than 170 prisons, and they had about 1.7 billion. So, they rack in at almost $2 billion every year just off of inmates. The CCA has been the subject of much controversy over the years, mostly related to the apparent attempt to save money, such as hiring inadequate staff, extensive lobbying, lack of proper cooperation with legal entities to avoid repercussions. CCA rebranded itself into Core Civic among the ongoing scrutiny of the private prison industry. So I read you all of that, and now you see it's more than enough money in this stuff. It's more than enough money, and they're running it like a business. Now, what I just read you was a state prison. I want to make sure it's clear, because if they run across this, I don't want to be like, oh, you saying that we had anything to do with the Parchman prison. I'm not saying that. Mississippi State Penitentiary was not their prison. They're being moved to another prison. But Yo Gotti did allege while he was on the Breakfast Club that, because the inmates, I guess, was sneaking in phones or just ways of communicating with people from the outside. And instead of fixing the problem, the company hired, not the company, Yo Gotti alleges that these vehicles was put outside of their prisons to prevent cell phone service, meaning to block or to jam cell phone service, so that they couldn't get it out. They couldn't, expose them for what they were and were not doing. They've been cited for many violations. And amidst all of these violations, here's what the CEO of Core Civic had to say. Situations like this exemplify how crucially important it is for state and federal partners to have access to our real estate assets and associate serving officers and associated service offering. This is from the CEO, Damon Hingling, said in the release, without the private sector, there would be no immediate alternative solution available to the state. So I guess this is his way of saying this is why you need private prisons, because the state can't afford to run prisons correctly. So it's all a ploy, man. It's all a tip. One hand washes the other. One hand washes the other. That's what it seems like to me. That's what it seems like to me. You can really tell me what you think. I know I went in deep with that particular subject just because I really wanted you to grasp the understanding and the importance of what it is that what not only what a lot of these institutions have to go through, because the fact of the matter is somebody had to break the toilet. The food being contaminated is completely unacceptable. But you are housing inmates. You are housing people who are naturally breaking laws. This is what they do. And the people who seem to be governing them are also equally involved in, or at least complicit in this law breaking. So it can really make it tough, man. It can really make it tough for someone who's really trying to rehabilitate, really trying to figure out what they're going to, how can I focus on what I'm going to do when I get out, when I don't know if I'm going to get out? I can't even take the time to think what the prison sentence is supposed to be, which is time for you to think about what you did. How can I think about what I did when it's so much going on and it's such a corrupt system? I didn't take out the excerpt. Like I said, I read so much and there was so much information on this stuff, and I just took out the part that I really thought y'all could learn a lot from. It was just so much to go with it. You see where they get this F the police mentality from. And then their kids have it, and the kids see dad got this resentment towards the cops, so they have it. I was reading something, and I'm gonna move on to a more lighter topic after this. But I was reading something about Nipsey Hussle, one of my favorite newer or younger artists. He died out in Crenshaw about last year of March. But they was talking to the guy who got shot along with him, dude who got out after serving 26 years for stabbing a woman who was reportedly trying to scam him, was trying to scam, saying that she would buy some crack from him, skim a little bit off, and say, "Oh, you shorted me," so he would give her, her money back, or he would give her more dope. And I'm like, well, bro, that's on you. That's on you. And apparently, altercation breaks out. He stabs Eliza to death. He serves 25 years. He gets out. And looking to get some kind of love, got some kind of appreciation from Nipsey, where they gave him some socks, shirts, hats, just something you would need when you get home and getting back on your feet. He would also Nipsey also hired people, to sweep the parking lots, clean up, and do all this other stuff. Well, one of the women who was, I guess, 57-year-old woman who's been a member of the Rolling 60, same crew as Nipsey, since they started in the 70s, talked about what Crip used to be. Crip used to be like a youth club, right? They would sneak out, and the worst things they would do was hop the fence and pull all the benches together at their local school and have, I guess, a big slumber party under the stars, how she explained it. I guess that's what she was doing. And it went into that crack epidemic where they said they started being pushed back against the cops. I think that's a missed opportunity. because see the way you deal with that, that's kind of set in stone now, because there was already a war over territory. That territory became beef set in stone. She talked about seeing the switch in mindset against police, and how in one generation, because I never remember this beautiful generation of the 70s of how they viewed Crips as a political party. I never knew that. I've never known a time when you could leave your door unlocked. I never knew a time when if you came home and you lost your key, you can stay with the neighbor. All I know is lock the door, don't trust nobody. So it's kind of strange just to think like a decade or two before I was born, the world was so different. It's so strange to believe that, and we clearly can't go back because you can't go back in time, but if there is another that to come, what do you think? Leave in the comment section. What do you think we would have to do, not only as our community, as law enforcement, and as a society in a whole, to get back to that place where we was once at, apparently for a good little while? But I want to take it on the lighter news and speak on somebody who has been working hard and deserves this appreciation. I wanted to talk about an Atlanta legend by the name of Raheem the Dream. Raheem the Dream, if you don't know, you may know him from the song Most Beautiful Girl. You may know him from Freak No More. And if you do know these songs, sir, you or ma'am, you are old as it gets. These songs he was a rapper from the 80s at the time. And I came across one of his interviews. He was talking about how he sold records, right? So he was selling cassette tapes. He was independent. That's what's so beautiful about it. He was an independent artist. He didn't really get too, too invested or too involved in the majors in the beginning. He was definitely on his own. He was standing his own too. And he would talk about selling like these independent albums or these independent cassette tapes and CDs to distributors. And these distributors would pay for it. I mean, they'll send him an invoice, and the invoice would be like, okay, well, here's your invoice. We'll pay you this in 60 days. So he was talking about, and I just thought this was so interesting, and it stuck when I seen the interview, and I had to finish watching it. He would talk about, all right, so you can sell it straight to mom and pop stores. That's cool. But the distribution already had a plug on the actual albums that they wanted. So you'll work hard in the streets, get it all going, then you'll press up your CDs. When you go to sell your CDs to the distribution pay you in 60 days, but charge the mom and pop stores that day when they get the CDs. So they gonna pay you on back end while you pay up front. Most people did this. Raheem the Dream was like, no, that's not fair. You're gonna pay me when I get it. So basically, the system he ended up setting up was every time he would send 3,000 CDs, he would get paid for those 3,000 CDs. So he was just bringing so many at one time. That's just how his stuff was booming across, the network that the distribution company had, because they charged $2 up. That was the retail price. So that was the wholesale price. So he was saying he got $6 off 300. 3,000. He coming home with 18 bands every time he drops off 3,000 cassette tapes. I was like, man, that sounds like a really good hustle and way too much work. This is the internet era, buddy. You could have just uploaded an album. But that shows you like the kind of ingenuity and the kind of thought process and kind of work ethic it would have took for you to get on back in the day, man. You had to know business. You had to know how to sit down. You had to be able to put a suit on in the day, negotiate businesses, and put on a fitted hat at night and rock the concerts. It was just took that kind of ingenuity and that self, and just that self-education, that self-knowledge, that self-matrimony, man. You got to respect stuff like that. So I wanted to run down this article I seen about him. Raheem the Dream talks about being first rapper to get airplay and gets rewarded. So Atlanta Councilman Michael Bonds recently bestowed an honor on the multi-talented entertainer Michael Rashid, Michael Raheem. That ain't Michael. I'm gonna go Raheem the Dream at Atlanta City Hall on Monday, May 16, 2006. So this was a while ago, but he gets into it. This was an article that really shows you his scope. So look, Raheem the Dream has been very successful in the music industry, locally, regionally. He has a major deal with Breakaway Entertainment through Atlantic Records and Universal Music. His honor is dedicated to his outstanding contribution, groundbreaking work that helped lay the foundation of Atlanta's hip-hop music scene. Councilman Bonds and other council members expressed their appreciation for the music and outstanding, tremendous contribution to the city of Atlanta music scene. They rewarded him with Raheem the Dream's Day. Raheem the Dream added, and I was bestowed with the Phoenix Award, the highest honor from the mayor's office. The Honorable Mayor Reed presented me with this award in complete surprise. So here's some questions he was asked. He says, how does such an honor make you feel? He says, an honor of this magnitude lets me know that my work did not go unnoticed. Brother, from the things that you laid down, if you was the first to get airplay from Atlanta, there's no reason nobody shouldn't know what you're doing. So what's the secret to success? He says, and this is important and this really caught my ear when I heard it. I'm glad I said I gotta tell the people who listen to me, because I've heard this before from other successful people. I'm not sure if it's a secret to success in entrepreneur, but I believe that after setting up and establishing a business, that means start working, build it, and they will come. Don't look for the handout. Build a business first. Maintain regular, consistent contact is essential. Follow-up is the most crucial aspect in entrepreneur. He goes into more depth, but that's pretty much the gist of it. They ask him, all right, so what's the secret to networking and building relationships? He says the secret to networking is getting involved at various levels with those who have similar business interests and build on that, maintaining regular and consistent contact. That means constantly, and consistency is the key to success. We've heard that 1,000 times, man, and we're going to hear it 1,000 more. His was another one. His was really a good question that I thought brought so much scope to just how monumental this brother was. So I'm going to read you the whole thing. It's a bit lengthy, but just hear it out. What is the difference between Atlanta music's film and TV scene when you started and now? He says, when I started in the music business, Atlanta was not a main player in the music, film, TV market. For instance, the rap, hip-hop music being played on the radio prior to 1956 was by artists on the East and West Coast. Local rap was played on radio on VS 103 FM on a Friday night fresh party for 2 hours from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. That's not really a lot of time, bro. That's not. I remember, it's funny he says that, because I remember Talib Kweli talking about hip-hop used to only play for 2 hours, and he was from New York. He said hip-hop didn't have its own station. It had 2 hours. It was from 6 to 8. You would hear hip-hop from 6 to 8. and apparently in Atlanta, it was the same thing, man. My music was the first rap played on commercial radios on rotation in Atlanta by local rap artists. It was first played by Mitch Flackner, who was a PD, program director, on Kiss 104 on August 2nd, 1986. This was history making in Atlanta rap music scene. We did not have reality shows or major films until the 2000s. Hip-hop music has been at the forefront of generating all of the interest in Atlanta, creating a reputation as a new music mecca. Ooh, talk heavy. You know it. So, man, you talking about August 1986, man, and you hear so much about Freaknik at that time, and I'm sure his music was the soundtrack for that. I remember Ross just posted an Instagram pic of him, JT Money, and Trick Daddy. He says Miami's Mount Rushmore. Like, he didn't even have Luke there. Like, now we talking about people who really spit, because I don't know if y'all know JT Money really spit. He can really go. He really talk about stuff, man. But I only brought that up because he also kind of came up from the same underground scene. And it was just on my mind. And, well, let me see. What current projects are you working on now? My current project, the book, The Record Business, The Uncut Truth. And he had a single out called We Don't Do Broke. Why is entrepreneurship important in the black community? Here it is. Entrepreneurship is important in all communities, but in the black community. It provides a sense of independence and positions the black community to control its own economic base. He asked who was his mentor. He pretty much says his mother. And, and here's another one. How do you use technology and social media? Is it helpful? I use technology primarily to promote music and my business interests and activities, as well as to stay in touch with my fans. We maintain social media accounts for me, as well as encourage everyone on the Too Tight to Death music label to do the same. I use technology on a daily basis. I have regular use of my mobile phone and tablet so I can stay in contact with my business contacts and interests. Yes, it's helpful to my business interests. So, just wanted you to know, hit that from Raheem the Dream. Raheem the Dream really comes from like a raunchy music scene too. He really had some real lady man's records. He was a real kind of player, kind of brother. It was just such an interesting time when I look back to that time, when I look back at the Southwest T distribution days when all of these artists, how they found just their own way of making money, making moves. And I think it's now better. I think it's better now, but the groundwork they had to put in, man. It was amazing. And look, let me see if I can get some time. If I can just hold your time for about another 2-3 minutes. So I want to do a picture's worth 1,000 words where I talk about an album cover, where I go into the story of an album cover or really talking to an album cover. This is a really basic album cover I'm going to talk about. It's a girl named Flo Milli from Mobile, Alabama. She has an album cover called, her album's called, get ready for this, Ho, Why Are You Here? I think that's a double entendre. The minute I said that, I was like, at first I thought she was talking to somebody else, but maybe this is like another thing. Like, why are you doing this? Maybe that's like a self thing. Maybe she asking herself, like, why are you here? Because I listen to her music and, bro, she all right. she okay for what it is. Like, it's tough for me to say how I like Flo Milli right now. How well do I like her music at this very point? Because this one of those, like, if you at a party and all the women going crazy to this song, they hitting the floor, they showing out to it, you like, that ain't a bad song. That song is okay. That song is straight. It'll do. You can play it anytime. These songs, she has a lot of that music. It's a lot of simple, hard bass hitting music. Kind of like Miami bass music a little bit. A little bit like she definitely comes from the family tree of Raheem the Dream and all these other little ratchets. But the thing that made me think about it, the thing that really made me stop and think on Flo Milli's album cover, it's nothing really special going on. Just a white backdrop, a young lady but I seen the blonde hair and the way she was squatted down, and the first person I thought about was Lil' Kim. Lil' Kim was the first person I thought, and I was like, you know what? She used to do stuff like that. And I'll always harken back to, is that more on the artist or is that on the photographer, right? Now, did the photographer give you plenty of looks and you said, oh, no, that remind me of Lil' Kim, I'm going to go with that one? Or did the photographer like, listen, we're going to go with what always works? Lil' Kim squatted down, did this certain look with the legs spread open. She killed it with that. I don't know if she came over that, because you look at like, when I say Foxy Brown, I mean like Pam Grier era. Like that 70s, when you look at how girls used to present themselves in those videos, I mean, in those album covers, it was like the hand on the hip, turn around look. Every girl did that. Every girl in the 90s was doing that one. There's some picture of your mom somewhere doing that. It's just, this is the way girls used to pose. Like now girls got the little toe touch, where, you know, they kind of got like one foot hiked up on the toe. I may be looking at their pictures a little too hard. But how they got the one toe hiked up, whatever, I'm like, okay, that's the new hoochie mama stance. But shorty, they keep going back, whether that be Meg Thee Stallion, Nicki Minaj, Cardi B on the Money. You remember Money, the album cover for Money? That was another one. Like the squat and pose, man, you got to give it to Kim when you doing that. I don't ever remember Trina doing that. I talked about Trina sitting on top of some dude in the ICU or something. Now, she was the ambulance driver. It was a little kinky. But anyway, that's my picture's worth 1,000 words. There's not much to say about Flo Milli's album cover. Pretty girl, though. For sure, pretty girl. But as always, I want you to make sure you like, comment, share, and more importantly, subscribe. It's your boy Dapper Don Dez. I'm out.